Alrighty, welcome everyone to the Virtual College Exploration Program in partnership with Colleges That Change Lives. This is the Kalamazoo College information session, but before I pass it over to the team, I'm going to kick us off with some housekeeping items in case you haven't heard them yet. First and foremost, there are more CTCL sessions through Tuesday evening. So if you're interested in connecting with more colleges and universities, please check back on that schedule. And when you register for these sessions, you may have noticed a barcode in that confirmation email. Know that that barcode is not necessary for any of the virtual events that you participate in. We are recording all of these sessions and posting them to our website shortly after the session concludes. So if you want to rewatch one you participated live in or watch one you may have missed, just check back on our website for those recordings. And then finally, you'll see and hear the Kalamazoo team. Unfortunately, they cannot see or hear you all. This is webinar style format. So any questions you have throughout the presentation, feel free to type those into the Q&A box, and the presenters will do their best to address those throughout the entire session. So I am going to pass it over to Andrew to get us started. Thanks so much for being here.
All right. Thank you, Jen. I really appreciate that warm welcome. All right. And here we go. So first, I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Andrew Grayson. I am the Senior Associate Director of Admission here at Kalamazoo College. We're so excited that you could join us today. I'm going to ask my colleague, Marcus, to introduce himself, and then we've also got two students with us today that are going to join in. Marcus, why don't you take it?
Hello, folks. My name is Marcus Johnson. I'm Assistant Director of Admission. I've been at the college for the past 8 years working in admission. Nice to be here today.
All right, Ellie, you're up.
Hi everyone, my name is Ellie and I'm a rising senior at K. I'm studying Spanish and theater.
And Leslie, your turn.
Hi everyone, I'm Leslie. I just graduated back in June, so I'm an alum now, which is weird to say, crying. But I studied business and Spanish, and I'm sure I'll tell you a lot more about my experience throughout this time. I'm excited to be here.
All right, very good. So I included our contact information on this page. There'll be some more at the end. Feel free to ask questions along the way. Marcus is going to be handling our question and answer. And I'm going to be doing the majority of the talking and relying on Ellie and Leslie to fill in with some of the kind of color commentary with some stories about what it's like to be a student. So with that, let's get started. All right. So first of all, Kalamazoo College, we are a small independent liberal arts school. We're one of the 100 oldest colleges and universities in the United States. So we've got a lot of really cool old traditions. We have a beautiful campus that you'll see a couple of pictures of today, but also we would encourage you to come and do a virtual visit and get a better sense for what that actually looks like. Probably not too dissimilar from some of the other CTCL schools that perhaps you've been listening to talk today or that you're signed up to listen to throughout this next week. We all have a lot in common, and one of the things we have in common is that we're all kind of smaller and student-centered schools. Now, Kalamazoo College itself specifically, we're about 1,500 students, and our students come from all over the country and in fact all over the world. Now granted that changes year to year. This year's been an unusual one, but without coronavirus, usually we've got students from almost 30 countries, and it's about 10% of our population. And then students from the majority of the other states in the country. Certainly plenty of students from Michigan, but also a lot of students from California and Texas, other places in the Midwest, and also the East Coast. The campus itself is in a residential area in Kalamazoo, Michigan. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. And then we've got some other stats that we're kind of excited about. If any of you are athletes, we've got some really awesome college sports teams. That's something that you could potentially participate in. And also obviously strong academics that we'll talk about later, which leads to a very high four-year graduation rate and retention rate. And being a small school means you get to know your faculty. So we've got a very low student to faculty ratio of about 13:1. Part of the reason why students will choose to attend these smaller, more student-focused liberal arts and sciences colleges is that they get to build relationships with faculty, that people really get to know them and they get to know those people that are working with them. So I think here's a great spot for our students panelists to jump in. I'm curious, as you're thinking about why you chose Kalamazoo College, what's the first thing that kind of comes to mind for you? Let's start with Leslie, since you just finished K and you've got kind of the full experience behind you.
Yeah, so choosing the college process was relatively simple for me. As soon as I got into K's campus, I kind of just fell in love. But the main reasons I looked at K in the first place included my ability to have a small team that the current or reasons.
All right, and Ellie, how about you?
For me, I think I was looking at a lot of very similar schools, and there were a few things about K that made it stand out a lot to me. And one of those things was just how robust study abroad is at K and how integrated it is into the academic structure. And also, just another thing, just when I was on campus visiting and engaging with other prospective students and current students, it was very clear to me that the student body is just very engaged and globally minded and very passionate about what they're studying at K.
Very cool. And I will say, having worked with students here for almost 10 years, that's one of the things that I love about the kids that I get to engage with, is that they tend to be really deeply interested in and engaged in and invested in the things that they do while they're in college, which, you know, I feel really spoiled that that's the group of people that I get to spend my time with. So I mentioned before the community that we're in. One of the you know, really unusual things about Kalamazoo College is that we're not in a forest or in a cornfield. We're actually in a pretty decent sized town. So the city of Kalamazoo is about 90,000 people in a metro area of about 350,000. And we've got a lot of community partnerships that our students can engage with in various ways. Here's a couple of examples here of some of the different companies and organizations in our city that our students get to engage with. Like I mentioned, the area is bigger than just our campus. We have about 1,500 students, but there's about 40,000 college students in the Metro Kalamazoo area. And that's out of a population of about 325,000 people. We're also pretty well connected. So we're about a 15-minute drive from a commercial airport. We're about a 1-mile drive from the local Amtrak station that connects you to both Chicago and Detroit, which is about 140 miles. And you're about a 10 to 15-minute walk to places that are great music venues and coffee shops. You know, we sort of jokingly put stuffed burgers and sushi here, but both of those things can be found right in walking distance from our campus, which means that you're not limited to just that 1,500 students and just the beautiful residential campus that we have. Now I noticed, I think Ellie, you are the only one left at the moment because I think Leslie was going to try to check her connection. But I'm curious, Ellie, if you've had any experience really connecting with the community of Kalamazoo outside of the campus.
Yeah, for sure. I think as a theater student, it's been super great for me to be able to connect with the different theater companies that are downtown, seeing their work, but also doing work with them. Yeah, that I think for me has been the biggest thing that I've loved engaging with in the wider Kalamazoo community.
Very cool. And in a second, we're going to talk about our K plan. And one of the big features of the K plan includes ways for students to really engage more deeply with their community, including some of these partnerships that we have in the city of Kalamazoo. So let's dive into the K plan. When we're talking about what makes our small independent liberal arts and sciences college different, this is one of the easiest ways to define that. There's 4 parts to it. We have a very flexible and rigorous liberal arts and sciences curriculum. It's an open curriculum. So we'll talk about that in a minute because I think that that's an important piece of this. We also have a huge emphasis on hands-on learning. So not just sitting and listening to people talk or reading in books, but actually digging in and getting your hands dirty. finding ways to apply what it is that you're learning in the community around you, and indeed finding ways to make the world around you a better place. Which leads us to the international and intercultural experience. The vast majority of our students, again, in a normal year when coronavirus is not a challenge, something between 70 and 80% of our graduates will study abroad. And we're every year coming up with more flexible and interesting ways for students to continue to engage in that. And then all of our students are going to finish their time, and Leslie might talk about this a little bit later, by completing a senior individualized project or some sort of independent scholarship where they really get to dive deep into a particular topic that they're passionate about. So all of this comes together because we have really dedicated faculty and faculty who are all academic advisors. This isn't something that we would advise students to go through alone. It's really critical that they're surrounded by people who will support them through the process. Having a lot of choices is great. Having people to help you make those choices is also really important. So that's another piece of this. When we're talking about our curriculum, the easiest way to talk about it is to say what it isn't. So most colleges have a very defined list of classes that you have to take in order to graduate. They'll call them a core curriculum or general education requirements, something along those lines. And that's something that we don't have. Instead, students will choose at least one major, but because of the flexibility, a lot of our students will choose to do more than one. They have to be proficient in a language other than English, although a lot of our students also will come in with some experience and might even test out of that requirement. I mentioned before that that senior individualized project is actually a part of the curriculum. Everyone will do one, but they get to choose what it is. And then there's a first year, sophomore, and senior seminar class that they will choose along with their electives and their health and wellness courses. So at the end of the day, even if you and 6 people that you know from your high school all went to Kalamazoo College, you can each build your own completely unique experience while you're here, as far as your academic experience goes. And frankly, the rest of it too. So that's not the best fit for everyone. Some people, I think, would prefer to be given a list of things to do and just go and accomplish those things. But for students who are saying, you know, I'm interested in the sciences, but also I'm interested in language, or I'm excited about the idea of continuing my passion of theater, but I also maybe want to go into law, or I want to be a doctor, but I also want to learn about how to make the world a better place. Our flexibility allows students to dive into multiple areas with serious depth. And while they're doing that, to really be the ones who are the primary architects of their experience. So this seems like a good time. Ellie, why don't you tell us just for a little bit how you came to choose your major?
Well, I knew that I wanted to keep doing theater at K, but like not the extent, like I didn't know if I wanted to just participate in it or fully be majoring in it. And so I took theater classes right when I got to K, but I also had so much room and flexibility to take classes in a variety of other subjects. And through that, I had a really great time and I learned a lot of things that I'm incorporating into my theater practice even, but it like really solidified that I wanted to continue studying theater. And then with the Spanish major that I have, I took Spanish in high school and also knew that I wanted to continue that at K, but not the extent. Again, I wasn't sure about that. And so I was taking Spanish classes and just really loved all of the faculty and all the different classes that were offered in the Spanish department and knew I wanted to keep taking them throughout my time at K and that would add up to a major.
Very cool. So I think that, as I was mentioning before, a lot of what you're talking about is reflected in the relationships that you've built with faculty and with your advisors, and also with the students that you were in class with too, that you've got all these influences along the way to help you make some of those decisions about where it is that you want to go next. The second piece of the K plan that's also really critical and tends to happen more outside of the classroom than in, but is kind of a mix, is this idea of hands-on learning. So here we've got a couple of examples listed of the different places that can happen. We have a focus certainly in career development. We want students to have opportunities to do things like internships and externships, perhaps research fellowships, stuff that they can put on a resume and show, here's what I did while I was in college. I studied, but also I proved these particular skill sets, or I developed these particular kinds of competencies. And then also we have things like service learning and civic engagement. That's where some of those community partnerships really come into play for us. And then of course, we also have our Social Justice Leadership Center. It's called the ARCA Center. It's one of the buildings on our campus. And as far as we know, it's one of the only places in the country that's purpose-built for students to dive into this idea of how do I make the world a better place and pursue my passions at the same time. Leslie, I'm curious if you could tell us a little bit about some of the professional development experiences that you had while you were at K.
Absolutely. So kind of just going in order, one of the first ones that I would say would be the internships. I did have an internship not only in the admission office, but also off campus during my senior year. Then the one off campus was created, well, not created, but it was shown to me because of a professor relationship. And then a career track, also looking at that. K does a lot of different career tracks, which are really unique opportunities where they kind of take a group of students to the actual location. For example, Stryker, Kellogg's, Chicago, even all the way out to the West Coast. And these are just kind of a group of students who are able to meet with and work with alumni for a day, maybe a few days, depending on the trek itself, and learn not only about the company, but also their K plans and how they got there.
Very cool. So that's not a particularly unique experience that Leslie had. In fact, the majority of our students are going to dive in at some level in some of those things. About 70% of our students engage in professional development before they leave us. Because we know it's not just important for them to showcase that they're smart and have good grades on their transcript, but they also need to show that they're capable. So we like to provide a lot of opportunities for that kind of thing. And then it's not just the resume builders, but also the fun stuff. A lot of learning happens in the student involvement. We have over 80 student organizations and clubs on our campus. Ellie, I'm curious if you could tell us about maybe one or two of the student organizations or clubs that you were a part of.
I'm part of one of our a cappella groups on campus. We have 4, and it was something that I never imagined myself doing, but somebody kind of roped me into auditioning for one of the groups, and then I got in, and it's been absolutely one of my favorite things. And I think it's really cool because it's such a mixed group of people that are in the group that are studying such different things and having such different experiences outside of our a cappella group, but then we come together through this shared passion for singing, and it's just been such a joy to be a part of.
Very cool. And actually, I happen to know a little stat there that our student singing groups, the a cappella groups, if they were all to join together, would make up the second largest student organization on our campus, followed only after the student dance group, which has been very, very large in the last couple of years. So yes, we are a liberal arts and sciences college, but also our students tend to do some really creative and fun stuff along the way. So the third piece of the K plan, and this is something that Kalamazoo College especially is well known for nationally, is that we have a really strong study abroad and study away program. We've been a national leader in study abroad programs for over 50 years, and the vast majority of our students are able to include that in their Kalamazoo College experience. At a lot of schools, I think study abroad is seen as something that is kind of a bonus round almost, or it's a way to get away from campus, it's a way to get away from college for a little while and go do something fun. Whereas I think at Kalamazoo College, it's seen as part and parcel of the whole. It's a way for you to build skills that you wouldn't be able to build here on our campus or here in the United States. It's a way for students to experience things that they wouldn't be able to otherwise experience, and they continue to take the same level of challenging coursework that they would if they were here. Their financial aid will cover the cost the same way that it would if they were on our campus. So we try to remove as many barriers as possible so that it's not just something that our affluent and privileged students can take advantage of, but rather something that any of our students can take advantage of. Now, Leslie, I know that you studied abroad because I think we studied abroad in the same place. I buried the lead there a little bit. I am actually a class of 2010 graduate, and I studied abroad in a place called Cáceres, Spain, which is a little town in the middle of nowhere. So I know that's where you went. Ellie, did you also study abroad?
Yeah, I studied abroad last fall in Chile.
Awesome. How did you end up choosing Chile? What was the process there?
You know, there are so many programs, it was kind of overwhelming, and I kind of just went with my gut. I knew that I wanted to live with a host family in a Spanish-speaking country. Um, and and then beyond that, I was kind of deciding between Ecuador and Chile, but I kind of always knew in the back of my mind that I would end up choosing Chile, and I don't really have a clear reason why. I just was drawn to it.
Sometimes that's a perfectly good reason. This is another one of the areas where students do have a fair amount of help in making these kinds of decisions. So our Center for International Programs helps guide students through the decision-making process, figuring out where do they want to spend their time abroad. Most of our students go during their junior year, and the majority of our students go for a pretty decent amount of time. We are on a trimester system at Kalamazoo College. Now, we call them quarters, but that's mostly because we like to mess with people. There are only 3. There's fall, winter, and spring. And most of our students go abroad for the fall and the winter term of their junior year. However, there is a fair amount of flexibility and students can go for a shorter or longer period of time. But we really want them to be integrated into a local culture. We want it to be intentionally connected to their course of study while they're at the college. And we want them to really have an experience of having lived abroad, not just having gone on a long vacation. So those are some of the things that set Kalamazoo College's study abroad programs apart. In a lot of ways, I heard a colleague say before, and I completely agree with it, at Kalamazoo College, study abroad is an opt-out program more than it's an opt-in program. It's assumed that students are going to either go abroad or go somewhere in the United States aside from our campus for at least a period of time. Now, I want to remind you all while we're diving into this last part of the K plan here that you can ask us questions. Marcus is ready and waiting for your queries, and you can enter them in the chat feature down there, either at the bottom or top of your page, depending on which format you're using here. Now, the fourth and final part of the K plan is a big one. It's the Senior Independent or Senior Individualized Research Project. A lot of stuff at K is optional. The Senior Research Project is not. Every student does one. But just like so many other parts of the K plan, it's incredibly variable and flexible depending on students' interests and where it is that they want to end up when they leave us. So students can spend a term doing an internship and then writing about that experience, or they can also do original research with a faculty member on our campus. They can also get a research fellowship at another institution or at a research facility somewhere. There's lots and lots of possibilities. There are as many senior independent research projects as there are students on our campus. I personally always love spring term because that tends to be where the seniors are finally finished with their projects and they're ready to roll them out and present them to people. You'll see public artwork displayed around campus, new sculptures sitting on the quad, fun things hanging from the trees. There's always a film festival and there's students putting on plays, and also lots of really, really interesting research being displayed and explained to folks. So it's fun to visit in the spring and see all that stuff. Now, Leslie, I know you've just finished yours. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your senior project?
Yeah, of course. So with my project, I did kind of what is seen as, I don't want to say typical, but kind of like the base project of, I kind of did research and I wrote about a 65-page paper on it, which sounds very daunting, but you have a faculty mentor the whole time and I guess advisor technically, and they are extremely helpful, very kind of on top of your schedule, making sure timelines are met, things like that. So for mine, I decided that I wanted to go the business route. So I looked at student loans and their effects, if they have any, on the economy. So over the summer, I did my research, and then I wrote all of that in the fall and turned it in the first week of our winter quarter.
Very topical, yes. Ellie, do you know what you're planning on doing for your senior project?
Yes, I'm kind of working on my snappy explanation of it. But
Let's hear it.
I'm doing a research project about intimacy direction, which is a new, very blossoming profession within theater. That's like a person that is in charge of choreographing the intimacy that's on stage in a way that's rooted in consent. So yeah.
Very cool. Very, very cool. So similarly, my senior project was a 65-page long research paper, and I do think that can be intimidating to talk about to high school students, which I think are mostly who's listening to us today. So one of the things I want to point out is that the Senior Individualized project comes after 3 years of having already built the skills to accomplish something like this. So asking you to write a 65 page long research paper right now would be like asking you to jump on the roof of a 3-story building. In a fantasy movie, maybe that's possible, but for most people, that's not going to be a thing that they can just turn around and decide to do. But what college is, which is taking the classes and writing the papers and having the classroom discussions, digging into things that you're interested in and getting the experience out in the field, is building something of a scaffolding. So that when you get to your senior year and you start talking about what comes next, you start talking about these bigger kinds of projects, you're able to not just jump from the ground up to that 3rd floor window. You've got you've got something to climb. You've got a staircase that you can follow that you've been building all the way along. So it's not that it's a small thing, but it's a thing that you're ready for once you get there. And the Senior Independent Research Project really is designed to help students think about what it is that they want to do next. To think about, what sort of thing would I want to be able to display for a future employer or pull out of my back pocket for a potential graduate school. At the end of the day, we know that your time in college is not just about, being here for 4 years. And it's really not so much a destination in and of itself, but it's a vehicle taking you somewhere. A lot of you folks in high school don't necessarily know exactly yet where that's going to be, or you have ideas, but you're not exactly sure yet. Part of what college does, and especially a really flexible and personalized experience like Kalamazoo College, is that it helps you figure out what that trajectory is going to be. The K plan, if we remind ourselves what it actually is, with the open and flexible curriculum, with its experiential education and professional development, the international and intercultural learning, and the senior research project, means that when you're done, you've got a transcript that shows that you've learned some stuff in a couple of areas that are going to be important to you. You've also gained some experience in some things that you're going to be able to point to and say, here's some things I've accomplished. Potentially you'll have had experiences both here and abroad that have, made you realize new things about yourself and give you some context for an increasingly complex world that we live in. And the senior project is an example of the polished kind of work that you're capable of doing when you've gone from being a high school student who's incredibly smart and capable to being a college student who's about to graduate, who's been able to take that intelligence, take that experience, and really run with it and make something of it. So once you're finished, our students do tend to go off and do some pretty cool stuff. We're really proud of what the K plan has allowed students to accomplish. So the majority of our students are able to find jobs if they're looking for them. And what we ask students, actually, that 91% number, is, were you able to find meaningful employment within 6 months of graduation? So if you're a psych student, but you find a job in marketing, that could be meaningful employment. Or if you were planning on going to med school, but then you decided that you wanted to go save the world from a global pandemic, for example, that could be meaningful employment. So our students are able to find things that fit well with them, that are the next step when they leave college. Not necessarily the thing they're going to do for the rest of their lives, and we are still here for that afterwards. Students still have access to professional development and the alumni network well after they graduate to continue as they search for the next opportunity. Keeping that in mind, we also have a lot of students who go off to graduate school. The last stat that I saw was that about 85% of our graduates eventually receive a higher degree after they leave us. That's exceptionally high. It puts us in the top 2% in the country. So if you're the kind of person who really enjoys learning and you think that that might be something that's in your future, continuing to get degrees, continuing to seek out future opportunities in education, Kalamazoo College is a really good place to set you up for that. I think a lot of our students, once they do get to that next step, will say, wow, like I worked so hard in college that my graduate school actually felt easier, or that job, I really found myself way more prepared than a lot of the people that came from other kinds of educational backgrounds. And that's something that we're really proud of. And we're always excited when our students come back to campus, our alumni come back to campus, and they tell us about what it is they've been up to afterwards. Okay, so switching gears ever so slightly here, and I hope that you'll continue to ask those questions. These are some awesome questions that are coming in for our team to answer. I want to talk a little bit about the application process itself, because that is a lot of what I do. It's a lot of what Marcus does. We read applications and we help students navigate how to get into college and then how to choose the college that's right for them. So starting with deadlines, we have an early action, regular decision, and early binding decision program. Most students I recommend to apply in the early action period. It allows them to apply early and get it off their plate and then hear back from us early so that they know where they stand. If they are admitted, they're also going to receive their merit scholarship along the same time, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But then they're ready to compare and contrast schools, and they've got some time before May 1st when they have to make their final decision. Regular decision is great for students who know that they'd like us to see their fall grades, or for students who's just not quite ready yet, or maybe they haven't heard of us yet, which wouldn't be any of you, before that fall deadline comes around. Other than that, there's really not a whole lot of difference except for that you don't have quite as much time to compare and contrast. Early decision is excellent for students who know exactly where it is that they want to go. They are already bleeding black and orange. Kalamazoo College is their school and they've already chosen it. That's why we call it early decision. They've already decided. If that's you, let's have a conversation about that offline. We'd love to sit and talk through what that's going to look like for you and also connect you with folks around campus so that you can get to know us a little bit better. So let's talk about what we're actually looking for in the application itself. I'm pulling back the curtain here. These are all of our secrets. Primarily what we're trying to discern is, are you a student who's showing that you can do the work at Kalamazoo College? And are you a good fit for us? If the answer is yes to both of those questions, very, very likely you're going to be admitted to our school. We are admission counselors. So what that means is we are looking for reasons to admit you. We're not sitting here with a big red deny stamp looking for reasons to deny you. So keep that in mind when you're writing your application. If there's stuff that you think we should know, that you think potentially could help, let us know. These are things that we're interested in seeing. The really important stuff is going to be your transcript. So we'll see what your grades look like. Now the average GPA is about a 3.9, but don't let that scare you away. We have students everywhere from a 3 to a 4.6 on a weighted scale. I have plenty of students who are on a 7-point scale or a 100-point scale. So the grade number itself is not the most important thing. What we're looking for is students who've done well in a challenging curriculum. So if you're getting A's and B's, you're looking great. A couple of C's maybe in harder classes, still looking good. And that's where that curriculum piece comes in. We're looking for students who are taking advantage of what's available in their school. Some schools will have AP or International Baccalaureate or dual enrollment options available to them. If your school offers 3 of those and you took 2, that's awesome. If your school offers 26 of them and you only took 1, well, I'll be curious to know why you didn't take more, because those are the kinds of courses that prepare you for Kalamazoo College education. Now, we look really closely at your essay. We use the Common Application. And so it's just a Common Application essay. It's 650 words. You get to choose the topic. And from that, we're primarily looking to see, is there solid quality of writing? It doesn't need to be New York Times bestseller list material, but if you're funny, be funny. If you're not, maybe don't try. Make sure that you've got solid grammar and punctuation and spelling. And also, if we get to know you a little bit better after having read your essay, that is always a good thing. So if there's something we already know about you, for example, maybe you're an athlete, or maybe you are a star performer in a musical, and that's somewhere else in your application, for example, your co-curricular and extracurricular activities, write your essay about something else. We will look at recommendation letters from at least one counselor and a teacher. You can send more if you want to. And then you'll notice that we are test optional. A lot of schools this year have gone test optional because ACT and SAT tests have been hard to take because of coronavirus. We have been test optional for about 5 years. So we absolutely understand how that works. I will say it once and I'll say it again. If you're proud of your test score, in the same way that maybe you're proud of your poetry or you're proud of your art, you should send your test score just the same way that you can send us your poetry or your art. If you're a terrible artist, you don't have to send us what's in your drawing notebook. In the same way as if you're not a great test taker, you don't have to send us your test score. So that takes us to scholarships and financial aid. These are obviously important pieces of the pie for a lot of families. We know that college is an expensive proposition. We also believe that it's a really valuable one. So let's talk through what goes into deciding what the merit-based scholarship looks like. It's a lot of things that we already just talked about. We're looking for the students who have solid grades, students who've taken a challenging curriculum, and students who've written a really good essay. For Kalamazoo College, those are actually the three things that primarily factor into deciding whether or not a student's going to receive a merit award and how large that award might be. Right now, they range from about $20,000 to $33,000 each year. The only thing that a student has to do in order to maintain those scholarships is keep above a 2.5 GPA. And the reason for that is that we want you to be able to come to college and take hard classes. We want you to be able to take organic chemistry and not worry that, oh no, if I took a hard class and I don't get an A, I'm gonna lose my scholarship. We don't expect that you're gonna get all A's in college because you're gonna take classes that push you. And then you don't have to reapply for it each year. It's automatically applied every year for 4 years of school. We do have another merit-based award called the Enlightened Leadership Awards. Those are in music and theater. So as part of your application, you can submit portfolios of creative work. You can also submit portfolios for music and theater or do auditions, probably this year online, but potentially in person, depending on the year, in order to receive an additional scholarship for those areas. Those are competitive, but if you're at all interested, I would definitely encourage you to reach out to us and we can talk a little bit more about whether or not you'd be a good fit for that. And then just to keep in mind, I mentioned earlier that we have 18 varsity sports on our campus and about 25 to 30% of our students are varsity athletes. However, being an NCAA Division III school, we do not offer athletic scholarships. So all the students who are on our campus who receive scholarship, it's based on their academics and their performance. Now, need-based financial aid is a little bit more complicated. However, I always encourage families to apply. It's a good idea to submit a FAFSA. It's open as soon as October 1st, the year that you're going to apply to college. It'll open up things like the possibility of state and federal aid, also subsidized and unsubsidized loans, and federal work study. It also opens up the possibility of Kalamazoo College institutional need-based aid. So sometimes, in fact, pretty frequently, we are able to offer scholarship dollars above the merit-based award for students who apply for need-based aid. And the calculus for that is complicated and it depends on each family. However, it's something that we can talk about individually if you're interested in learning more. And I would encourage everybody to submit a FAFSA if they're interested in receiving additional need-based aid. Now, if you apply early in November, then you're likely to receive the need-based awards in mid-December. So hopefully, again, that gives you a little bit of an idea of your timeline of when you'd be able to do some side-by-side comparisons of cost. And then when we're talking about value, we like to point out, for example, that our loan default rate right now is at 0%. So what that means is that over the last few years, none of the students who have graduated from Kalamazoo College or who have taken out loans to pay for Kalamazoo College have had a hard time paying off those loans to the point where they couldn't. So that was a really helpful statistic for me when I was applying to college in determining that, you know what, this is actually a pretty sound investment. It's something that I'm comfortable spending my money on and comfortable taking out loans for because I know that other people who've done it in the past have been successful. That's also a very personal decision to make. Kalamazoo College is not an inexpensive school. For some students, it might be a cheaper option than others. For some, it might be more expensive. But for you, you have to decide whether or not it's worth it, if the value is there for you. If you love the idea of our open curriculum and study abroad and the intercultural learning of our social justice leadership center or our community connections, if you love the idea of being able to do independent research as an undergraduate, any of that stuff, Kalamazoo College might be a really great investment for you. But if none of that rings for you, then maybe it isn't. And again, those are discussions that we're really happy to have with you one-on-one. So this gets us kind of close to the end of our presentation here, and I've got some contact information up here. We've got a couple of minutes, and I want to end with asking our students one last question, because I think that this is a fun one to dig into. So Leslie and Ellie, just as a warning, I'm going to ask you, what's a piece of advice that you would give to yourself if you were applying to college now? What's something that you've learned while you've been in school that you wish that you knew, or something that you would tell your younger version of yourself? And Leslie, we'll start with you since you're a little bit further out.
Oh my goodness. I mean, I think the one thing when I was looking at colleges was really to make sure I knew what I wanted out of a college, which I think is best being able to figure out by actually visiting or talking to people. Growing up, I was always like, I'm gonna go to like big, like University of Michigan or Western, like bigger schools. I was like, I would never go to a private school. As soon as I walked on Case campus, I knew that's where it was going to be for me. And any other campus just didn't compare, basically. I would go and visit lecture halls of 500 kids and I felt terrified. So, I mean, even just things like that, I found to be very helpful, knowing what are big no factors for you when it comes to finding that right school for you.
Awesome. Thanks, Leslie. Okay, Ellie, how about you? You're up.
That's a tough question, and I think one thing for me is I got very overwhelmed looking at all the options and feeling like if I didn't choose the perfect school for me, then it would be a huge mess up and like my life would be destroyed if I didn't choose the perfect school. And I feel like it's really about what you make of the opportunities once you do decide the school. And obviously making that decision is super important. And I'm so glad that I was able to visit campus and really connect with students and know that, okay, this is a student body that I could see myself being a part of. And this school has so many opportunities for me that I'm really excited about and wanting to pursue. And also like making this decision, I'm going to make it the right decision. And like, yeah, I don't know. Those are my thoughts.
I can't tell you how many times as I've been doing this over the years, students will say, it really came down to a feeling. And I think that that's something that's really important to pay attention to. At the end of the day, it's not enough to just have a major that you're interested in, a school that seems like it's good on paper, but it also needs to be a community of people that you want to be connected to. It needs to be a place that you are going to feel happy spending your time and your energy at. And that you'll feel supported in an environment that's going to work for you, a vibe that's going to work for you. I also want to acknowledge that that's really challenging right now in the time of COVID-19, because we know that it's hard to come and visit campuses. It's hard to come and see them yourselves. I was able to walk across our campus today because I live around the corner, so my dog was playing Frisbee out on the quad, and I got to see how beautiful it is. For those of you for whom that's going to be a challenge, I would invite you to spend some time getting to know us in other ways right now, and hopefully down the road, we're going to be able to invite you to campus and get you to actually see the place for yourself. As it stands, we have a pretty robust virtual visit program. We have a couple of events that will be coming up you can register for, like open houses. And you can sign yourself up for an individual session meeting with one of us, whichever your counselor might be. You can do an information session to dig a little bit deeper into some of the things we talked about today. And you can also do a one-on-one guided virtual tour of our campus with one of our current students. If you're interested in connecting with faculty in any of the areas that you might be interested in, that's something we can help with. Similarly, we've got alumni in a lot of the areas that you all live, and also current students who are in areas that you all live. So if you're interested in connecting with some of those people to talk about what it was like for them to go from Seattle to Kalamazoo, or from their own backyard in Kalamazoo to K College, you can talk with some people who've been through it. And then, like I said, as soon as it's safe, we're very, very excited to be able to welcome you all to campus so that you can see the place for yourselves. I also want to offer that you can follow us on social media. Here's a couple of the places that you can find us on Instagram, Snapchat, and Twitter. Now, you saw our email addresses there at the beginning, but if you go to our website, you can also find your specific admission counselor and connect with them. And we encourage you to continue asking these questions. So far, you all have done an awesome job of coming up with some, which is part of the reason why we love to do these Colleges That Change Lives tours in person, and we're excited to be able to do it virtually today. So keep asking good questions, keep connecting with us, and let us help you as you figure out what's the most important stuff for you as you continue this search. In the meantime, We're so happy that you're able to join us today. We know that spending some time on a Sunday talking about college might not have been the first thing on your list of fun things to do, but for us, we're just so excited that you've been here. And we are really looking forward to getting to know you more throughout this process. So I will leave it there. I think that's exactly our time, 6:45 Eastern Standard Time. And we appreciate your time.
And I just want to thank you to the Kalamazoo team for spending your evening with us and sharing all this great knowledge with the audience. As you exit the Zoom webinar, you will be taken to a quick survey. It's only 4 questions, so we'd love to hear your feedback regarding this particular session. And as I mentioned in the beginning, we have more CTCL sessions through Tuesday evening, and our recordings will be available shortly on our website. So I hope everyone has a great morning, evening, wherever you are, and thanks once again to the Kalamazoo team. Have a great night.